Hello, my friends, and welcome to Quartet. I'm John Petersen from the Arlington Institute, and we're very happy to have you with us today. It's a hot, summery day here in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, down the road from Washington and Baltimore. And we come to you every 2 weeks, fortnightly, to talk about some of the deep and significant things that are happening in the world in this amazing kind of transition that's going on. This is one of a number of projects here at the Arlington Institute. We'll talk more about that later, but I am joined, as I always am, by two of my good friends, Penny Kelly and Kingsley Dennis. Hello to the two of you.
Hello, hello. Good to be here.
Hi, John. Greetings all.
Yeah, and we're sorry that Gregg Braden can't be with us today, but he's traveling. So let's get started. So now it's time for questions. Every session when we get together, we try to address some of the questions that our viewers have sent to us. And often they send us comments, but as well as questions. And so let me start at the top with Richard Tyson, who says, Mike Adams from Natural News has written the following astonishing article. And he gives the URL for it. He says, is this disinformation, delusion, or could it possibly be true? Given your discussion about how difficult it is to discern truth, how is it possible to confirm whether it's BS or moral or a mortal threat? Well, the article that Mike Adams talked about was the notion that China and Russia are getting together to attack the United States and essentially assault from different directions, and they're solidifying their position. And the Chinese are building lots of roll-on, roll-off ships, which are used to roll on in large pieces of war machinery and roll them off, and they're typically only used for that. And so the question is, why in the world do they need 10,000 of these or however many there is? Lots that they're building. And I had heard that before, that they were doing that, but you never know in this case whether it's a circular thing where you're hearing the things that somebody else said, and so on. And so I'll come back and say something about this, but Penny, what do you think about that?
I think it's all in the perspective. The what if we look at the fact that the United States has totally squandered all of its goodwill, all of its integrity, all of its ethics, all of its honesty and willingness to work with others. What if the rest of the world is looking at the US and saying, those guys have been captured. We need to go in and rescue them. Let's go fix that situation, because those same bad boys that have taken over the US are trying to get control of us as well. So it's all in the perspective. I don't think they're getting ready to attack. If they are, I would say, okay, why? Is there something there that says they have to rout out the bad boys? You know? So I'm not really, I don't think it's helpful. I mean, I love what Mike Adams does in his work, etc. But there's an awful lot of what I'm going to call military mindset in that. And I think we need to get away from that a little bit and open up to what people in the US are not paying attention to, what the rest of the world is seeing or knowing. We're all caught up in pointing the fingers at one another, the lefties against the righties, against, whoever's in the way. And the whole coronavirus threat, all that has just consumed consciousness, and nobody's looking at what's really going on here. And so the rest of the world is looking at us going, what's wrong with those people?
Yep, good. Kingsley, what do you think?
Well, like Penny said, it's a matter of perspective. It's like that illusionary, illusion where you can look at a picture. Is it two faces or is it a vase? Yeah. So just because you have A, B, C, and D of these elements building up, it's still a kind of supposition that a person is making to say it's going to be for the attack. But also I want to say that I read that article, and what I did is that I went into Adam's site, and then I clicked out to see the original interview that Adams is based the transcript on. And I preferred to read the transcript because it was clearer than all this, video site. And the main message was that China and Russia are working together. That was the main message. And it said that China has intentions to invade and take back Taiwan. And if America intercedes, they will go against attack America. But I think the main thrust was Russia and China working together, which is a reasonable supposition to make. And I think there's a difference in that the Mike Adams side was just focusing on America is going to be attacked by China, you see. And I think there's some danger there because Mike Adams is well-intentioned, and I like where he's coming from, but he needs to put bum on seats. He needs to get people seeing his articles. So I think there's a danger of some information being a bit clickbaitish. So, wanting you to click on it to read it. So I would say always try and click out and go to the source of the article, take away all the garnish, and then try and read that and make your supposition. And again, be careful of these leaps from we have A, B, and C, but it doesn't go to Z necessarily. We have to get back as much to the source of the information and the transcripts.
Yeah, good points. It's rather interesting because what you got is analysis from a non-military, kind of governmental person who has never been inside of the system and essentially, in a sense, doesn't understand how it works, because there is a great deal, a constant kind of flow of effort to, as Richard Tyson says, to disinformation, to plant stories, to float things. They talked in this article about having somebody that leaked a conversation, a video or an audio of a conversation with some Chinese general or something. And, that you can never say it's not true, but it doesn't feel right because it sounds like the kind of thing that they'd put into the space to get everybody excited about, and not only us, but people in the U.S. government, if they truly thought we were thinking about it. And so it's you really need to be tentative about these kinds of things. For instance, they talk about the Russians attacking from the Arctic. I don't know. How in the world does that work? Do they come over? Do they attack Nome, Alaska? Is that where they're coming in, or are they coming down through Canada or something? I mean, it's just some of it just doesn't feel right, and so I think you just need to be careful about this stuff and not get too. But it's a data point for me in the futures business. It's a data point. So you can set it out there as one potential scenario and start to see if there are accretions, things that are starting to point their way in that direction. So thank you, Richard. Thank you very much for these questions and for the comments. And we hope very much that you'll continue to put questions and send them along, and we'll certainly consider them next time around. And so for our topic today, I sat down yesterday morning for maybe 20 minutes. And this is what I collected from headlines from 20 minutes and yesterday. Number one, Japan on verge of systematic collapse with dramatic, unpredictable non-linearities in financial markets, Deutsche Bank warns. Did you hear that? Japan's on the verge of economic collapse. I mean, that's crazy and wild. And then here's another one, how the supply chain turmoil is remaking the car industry. that there's just these fundamental issues. And then another one, America's inflation headache gets worse. It's a higher inflation than it's been in something like 30 or 40 years right now. And then there's another one that says a shocking, at least 77,000 deaths and 7.3 million people injured due to COVID vaccination across the US, Europe, UK, and Australia. 77,000, and that's always considered about, 1/10 at best, and maybe even 100th of the actual numbers. So you've got 750,000 people who have died quite easily from this COVID, and these things are showing up. And then I guess the one of the most interesting things that showed up this week was this Twitter thread from Kim.com. The point he makes is that the United States, you could dispose of all of the value and the assets in the United States, everything that everyone owns, and the US would owe over $16 trillion in debt. And that is just fundamentally unsustainable. The country is essentially bankrupt. And that it's impossible that can continue the way it's going. And then, of course, here at Arlington Institute at Transition Talks on the 23rd of July, Dr. David Martin is coming and to talk about a 2027, a big financial disruption, when he says that there's a place in 2027 where it's inevitable that all of the Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security all collapse, and there's impossible for the United States to continue to support those, and pensions and funds and everything collapse in the process. Well, I mean, that's 20 minutes worth of just gathering some things up, and I was just kind of taken aback, kind of saying, there's just this wave of kind of indicators that are showing up from many different kind of points, positions, and from many directions that are all saying that we're in for something that is really rather extraordinary. This is just cascading, and it just builds on top of each other, to say nothing about all of the political kinds of things. It's going to drive us into a space where nothing works the way it's worked in the past, and where all of the institutions and the people and the relationships and the groups that we've kind of anchored our sense of self and our sense of security around, the things that have given us our whole kind of notion of who we are and how we operate and what reality is evaporating and coming apart. The little book I wrote about wildcards and how you think about them, I laid out the thing that said that they chain and they influence one another. So one comes up and then it has this impact on another area that you really kind of didn't think about, but they're directly connected at some obscure kind of level, and that then turns into something else. And so the thing just rolls and it becomes ultimately a tsunami. And in that kind of way, in that kind of space, you say, how do you reconstitute yourself? How do you make sense out of it? How do you hold yourself, who you are, and how do you keep in mind an alternative kind of perspective other than what's going on around you in the face of all of that?
We are in a massive paradigm shift. So if you go from the paradigm of seeing the world as a great clockwork, a machine, and that's changing now. We're moving into a paradigm in which we're seeing the world as a great thought, which is based in consciousness. That's a massive change in perception and how things work. Sir James Jeans was a scientist in the early 1900s, and this is what he said. I want to read this quote. Quote, "The stream of knowledge is heading toward a non-mechanical reality. The universe begins to look more like a great thought than a great machine. Mind no longer appears to be an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. We ought rather hail it as the creator and the governor of the realm of matter. And then in an interview right after that, he gave this comment, quote, "I incline to the idealistic theory that consciousness is fundamental, and that the material universe is derived from consciousness, not consciousness from the material universe. In general, the universe seems to me to be nearer to a great thought than a great machine. It may well be, it seems to me, that each individual consciousness ought to be compared to a brain cell in a universal mind." So if that's the case, if we are each an individual brain cell in a universal mind, that's a huge shift in how we see ourselves and how we see our function. And that shift, if consciousness is fundamental and we're all conscious beings, and we're using that consciousness to build a reality and shape the everyday world, then we are the problem. It's not all the stuff happening out there, it's us. We're failing to see the nature of the self, or we're failing to make that leap into the new understanding of the nature of the self. So, you know, we're the ones that have to see that and stop complaining about everything and realize we're just complaining about our own failure to step up. So I think we're in the pickle we're in because of the way we think. We see the world out there as we're helpless, you know, the machine, we're just cogs in the machine. That's not true. You know, we're making the machine run. We are not just flesh and blood. We are flesh and blood that has accumulated around a set or matrix of frequencies. So here's my homework for people. So if we have 12 sectors, roughly 12 sectors in this reality system, every sector, every reality has some kind of a rough comparison to these: governance, humanities, society, agriculture, medicine, education, science, the arts, religion, belief systems, business and trade, money and finance, which is a little different from business and trade, technology, and then we have the space that we live in. We're floating. If you look at the planet, we're floating out there in space. It's like, how's that happening? And the solar system and the galaxy. So the homework is get creative with your sector. Whatever you're interested in, whether you're caught up in medicine or education or governance or whatever it is, science and technology, get creative within that and begin to understand that from a point of view in which we are mind and not machine. And we have to go from cooperation or from competition to cooperation, because that need to feel that you're better than others, that doesn't work in the great mind universe. And so cooperation and the need to be inclusive is that new paradigm.
What you're saying, among other things, is that we're the problem and the solution.
I would say that, as I mentioned earlier, we are in an age of deceit. And I think now we have to be brutally honest with ourselves. And I'm going to say a few words maybe from a kind of social psychological angle. You know, there's a lot of stuff coming through the surface now. And it's going to get, we know it's going to get ugly. And we can say that the patient is ill, you know, and there is toxicity in the illness of the patient. But how do you get that toxicity out? You have to allow it to kind of cleanse the system. And it's like having a boil, you know. I mean, no one likes talking about boils, but you got to pop the boil and get the pus out. And these are things that are going to happen now. And we have to be aware of it. We have to recognize it. I'm always reminded, and I quote people a phrase from the Gnostic Gospel of Philip. And in that Gnostic Gospel, it says that when the wickedness is hidden, it is strong. When it is recognized, it dissolves. When it's revealed, it perishes. And I think that's what we have to realize, that there's going to be a great revelation of these deceitful, corrupt systems, and it's going to be toxic for a while. And it's almost a kind of like the shadow, using Jungian terms. The shadow has to come out and be recognized. And it's coming through the surface now. But you see, for many people, it's going to be uncomfortable because they have claimed their baggage. You know, when you attach to your institute, your system, your body, whether it's the government or religious or financial, you know, you claim it, okay? But now that's not our baggage anymore. We have to disclaim what we've been entangled in, what we've been attaching to. Don't claim things as your own, which they are not. Like, oh, I'm suffering in this. Yes, many people are going to suffer. Don't claim that suffering as your own, because you didn't cause that suffering. Something else did. And that thing is suffering because it's cleansing itself. It's going through the toxicity. But you don't have to claim it as your own. And I think it's time now for a lot of people, all of us, to also learn how to get out of our own way. Because, you know, we often make the blockage for ourselves and make it more difficult. So I feel that in this time we're going through, we could say the unconscious is becoming conscious. And, you know, that's the darkness to be seen.
So we'll come back again in 2 weeks, and we'll talk some more about this. We do this every 2 weeks, and this is one of a number of programs we have here at the Arlington Institute. We've got a variety of different kind of programs. We've got a free newsletter and some other things. You can see that all. And easily, most of it is free, and a lot of it is on transitiontalks.org, which is our speaker series, and on arlingtoninstitute.org, and you can see all of that, and we hope that you'll go there and you'll check that out. Come back and see us next time. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and we appreciate everything that you send us and all your questions and your comments, and Quartet will be back, and Gregg will be back with us next time. So this is John Petersen from the Arlington Institute, and thank you. Take care.